I'm speaking this evening with Julia Mae McKinney. This is January the 6th, 1996, and she's going to share some of her life history and life stories with us, as well as being informative and informational. And so I will turn it over to her at this time.
I'm Julia McKinney, and I was born, my name given to me was Julia Mae Billy, but now I'm cut it down to Julia McKinney, and I have 6 children, 3 daughters, and 3 sons. Married to John. We've been married for 36 years. At present, he's an elder and also a commissioned lay preacher. And I have been commissioned since 1988. We're both members of the Pacific Presbyterian Church. I grew up in my grandfather's home, Simon W. Billy, my mother, Gracie Billy. As a little girl, only Choctaw was spoken. When I went to school, I had difficulty because I didn't know English at all. And also, I can remember to this day what it felt like for a young Choctaw girl to enter the white society. My mother wasn't fluent in English, and she took me to school for enrollment. And while she was there, I went with a group of girls, and we went to the restroom. My mother had left. When I come back, to this day, I can see a little girl with pigtails standing there crying because I couldn't communicate to the teachers. I stayed in the first grade 2 years because I didn't know a bit of English. Kids today know English before they enter school. And so when John and I were married, and knowing that the children will have to communicate in English, I made a decision that our children would speak only English because of my own experience. When my children were small, we had 2 children. Carl was about 2, Dino was about 4 months old. And John and I left Audacity, and we went to Oklahoma City. And we lived there for about 7 years. We attended church, a Presbyterian church there. But I couldn't fit in. The people themselves were real good to us. The pastor visited with us, but they were older members. And with a young couple and small children, I just couldn't fit in. I grew up in a Choctaw church, only Choctaw church, where we had Choctaw speaking ministers, Choctaw hymn singing, and I missed that. So we started going to Maryland Park, a Methodist church, where they had Choctaw preaching. and then also Choctaw classes. By then, we had our fourth child. I was in the process of taking my membership out of the Pacific Presbyterian Church. I had come home, and I talked with our minister and also our elders at that time. And Reverend Eli Samuel said, "I'd rather see you in a church. So if this is a decision and you feel comfortable in a Methodist church," he said, "go ahead and join. And then someday that you may return home to Broken Bow, that you can come back to our local church." But in that process, in that next 2 weeks, I was praying about this. The things, if this is the right path for us. John was not a member of the church anywhere. But after soul searching, the following week we came home. A job was offered to John. And this employer was willing to move us back. And so we decided to move back. I wanted to be in my own local church. I thought when I was in high school, I couldn't wait to get out and be on my own. I wanted to get away from the church. Seems like every time we turn around, it was always church. I had to be in church. I had to be in church. But after we had our own children, there was that emptiness. There was a void in my life. Living in Oklahoma City, we could have the money. He was working. We could get just about anything we needed. But yet, I had been brought up in church. And that there was something missing. And so we moved back. The money wasn't as much as what he was making when we lived in Oklahoma City. But yet, I was content coming back to my own local church. But as time went on, the church wasn't giving me what I needed, the nurture. But how I needed to grow in my Christian faith. And then as time went on, John was having health problems. And there was time that he had to have surgery. And this surgery wasn't done too much around here. And it could go either way. It was a 50-50 that he was going to have. At that time in our life, I kept praying that everything was going to work out for us, that he would be okay. I remember leaving the children with their grandmother and making this trip to Oklahoma City. And I remember I was crying from here to Ada, about 3-hour drive, when it came to me that I couldn't handle this by myself. I kept praying. And then it came to me, I had to let go and let God take control. He was the only one that could do that for us. And I let go. And I said, whatever, if you're going to take him, give me the strength to go hungry. And I start singing, because he lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives. Whatever happens, if you're going to take him, give me the strength. I've got to raise these 6 children. After that, there was just this warm feeling that went through me. I was driving. I was crying. There was another hour and a half drive. I drove to Oklahoma City, to the hospital where John was at. The next day he was in good shape. When I got there, I had quit crying. I didn't hear a voice. But something came into my mind and said, he is going to be all right. He is going to make it. Everything is going to be all right. When I got to the hospital, I said, John, you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. You're going to make it. The next morning, they came after him for surgery. They came, got him about 7:30. And I asked that doctor, can I stay in his room instead of going to the surgery waiting room? And he said, sure, you can stay. So I stayed in his room. And I'm always a crybaby. But there was no fear. I knew he was going to be okay. And so they took him. And it was about 4:30. I was in his room. And the phone rang and I picked it up. And the doctor said, John is okay. He went through the surgery. He's going to be all right. So it was about 6:30. All this time that we were going through this, John was growing in my faith. He saw me as a strong person. And it felt like I didn't have much strength. My prayer wasn't enough. I thought. But I wasn't giving God the spirit. He saw me as a person that trusted God, believed God. But after this encounter, I knew that God is real. I had been a Christian and had accepted Him as my personal Savior in my teens. And I did everything I should have done in church. But that time in the grove, when God became real in my life, there is none that He can live except Him. He took it all. And this is where it really changed my life. God is good. We're to put our dependence on Him. At the time, I didn't know that we had other plans for us. Then, afterwards, John had accepted Christ as his own personal Savior. In Bible school, during the services, he had seen that God could do for us. And stood on that. Also, he saw another people that he had grown up with. They had accepted Christ as the testimonies that he had told. And he accepted Christ. We had our 6th baby. She was about 9 months old. Became an elder. between 72 and 73. Can't find this in the session book or anything like that. It wasn't in there, but between 72 and 73 he became an elder. And we had been in church. Try to raise our children in church. It's been very difficult. Children will be children. And I know many times we felt like we were forcing them to stay in the church. That's the only way I knew in my life. My mother was always there. She's the one that was always very there. Stay in church. There is no other. Stay in church. Take the children. If you do not take the children, they will not know. It's up to you as a mother. And so most of our life has been spent in church. There's times that I've drifted away from church. But I'll be shown a dream. I believe in a dream. That God shows us. When I had stepped away from church, and God was showing a dream. Our elder, Oceana, I dreamed about him. He had passed away. I was dreaming about him, but I was in this dark valley, way down, and there was a big ditch between us. And I saw him standing in the mountainside, and he had his hand up. I want to be in your house. I want to be up there on the top of this mountain. He pointed to that beach. It's hard, but you can do it. You come through this valley. You're going to have to come through it. You're going to have to walk through it. And when I woke up, I knew it was because I was 15 minutes in the church. And I didn't want to. Stayed going back to church. Stayed in church. We lived in that Twin City and class. We got active in church. But still, my own local church wasn't nurturing me like I needed it. I remember back in the early 80s, we had a ministry that met at San Antonio. Velma Adair was our keynote speaker. She made a deep impact in my life. And she said that we have 24 hours in a day. It's how we spend it. We can sit back and complain, or we can make a difference. When I saw that she had a lot of responsibility, she was working in the church, she was working within the town, she was a mother, a grandmother, and an elder, and a moderator, all of us. And I saw that it made a difference. I said, I come from a small community, but yet God has led this person to be what she is. And God can do that. God can do that. And so, when I come back, I want to be more. Going to these women's group workshops, I try to take courses that can let me show me what I can do. Many times in our Choctaw community, I was told that women are to be in the kitchen, not behind the pulpit, behind our role was just to be in the kitchen and anything else. But she showed me something different. And they showed us in the workshop that in our lifetime we're constantly changing. We can be for the better or sit back and complain and grumble. In the time that you're born, to the age of 65. And at that time, I was under grandmother's work. But my second year I had gotten married. So I was hoping for a grandchild at that time. But I knew I would be a grandmother later on. So this made a difference. It made me start thinking about what's going on. We need leadership in the church. A lot of times I see women going to meetings just to be going. But many times when I'm in this church, I'm nobody. Our church is real small. But yet God cares for me. That I could help others. This is the way I saw myself. My grandfather was a minister, Presbyterian minister. He grew up in his home. I had forgotten about it, but in 1985 or 86, we had a devotional writing workshop at Arrowhead. And I attended. John and I both attended. And there was a period where they said for us to go outside, sit under a shade tree, go sit down somewhere, and write a devotional. And I remember walking up down. I sat there and looked across the wall. I had forgotten about this. But sitting after it came from me. That's all I mean from my father. Having devotional at the dinner table. Each morning at breakfast, after the Indigenous Peoples, or sometime at the evening. By day, he was a farmer. At night, he was studying. He was a minister, and he studied way into the night. He prayed for his children. And this was revealed to me. And so from then on, I must also pray for my children. I knew God had a plan for me, but I wasn't for sure of where I was at. I'm not a dreamer. I had a dream. It was at a butcher meeting. It seemed like we had all night singing. And after that was over, we were going to our house. Carla and Marissa were there. They were, in the dream, they were about 6, maybe 3 years old. And I had gotten to the count with the 2 girls. And I heard music. But it was coming up in there, up towards the cemetery. When I looked, there was a car over the tree. I found all of these prophets, or the pictures of the prophets that we read about in the Bible. I looked, and it was clouds just below. He kept coming. And the last one, the face I saw was Jesus. I remember saying, I want to be there with you, Jesus. And he just smiled. No. There's some work I want you to do for me. There's something I want you to do for me first. I didn't know what that was. I thought about it. And I was put on different committees, and I attended. It was taking that first step out. I've never traveled alone. But when I was put on this committee, I had to travel. I was scared, but I kept praying. Lord, you said you will not leave me. You will always be with me. Not on the planet God. We can't come down with you. Lord, lead me. Lord, show me. A lot of things like this that I went through, I had to take that step. Knowing that no one could help me through that. And then the worship leader committee was seeking people that would take Russian lay preacher training. And I said I wanted to take that course, but I just wanted to sit back and take the course so I could be a Pastor John. He was already a worship leader. And then also that I could have an effective devotional with the Presbyterian women. So that's where I thought I was going. But I wanted to take that course. I said, if it's too much, I probably could handle it. When the time came, we had to be approved by the parish. We went before the parish. I was in with the Presbyterian Women's Group, and I was in there when they called us. And they asked us to give a statement of faith, why we wanted to be a CLP. And so I went before the parish. And I said, well, I just want to take it, but I'm not going to be a commissioned lay preacher. Yet I gave my statement of faith, and we were accepted. And then it came back to the local. And so Evelyn said, do you know what you did? And I said, what? She said, you gave your statement of faith saying that you're becoming a commissioned lay preacher. And I said, no, they just asked us why you would like to take that training. So after I talked with her off and on for about 2 weeks, I said, that's not what I want. I don't want to be a commissioned lay preacher. I don't know how to stand before people. I can't preach. I can't do this. She said, Julia, that's a step, formal step that you took. So I kept saying, no, I can't do it. I was just Moses all over. I couldn't do it. I kept saying, well, finally, I had to deal with that. And then I remembered that dream that he did tell me. And if this is what you want, Lord, you have to show me. You have to help me. I can't do it by myself. And so, this is where I made up my mind that I would become a commissioned lay preacher. But in our home, we were taught prayer is the most important thing. This is what my mother tried to teach me, or tell me. She took me to church, stayed in church, she kept telling me. And so this is where I continue. My whole life has been, my family has been church-going family. Even in my teenage years, I had the influence of elders and ministers that were always there and ready to listen to me or to encourage me. And in the past few years, I can reflect, I can think back at the elders in the past. We've been blessed with strong leadership in this church, in particular, and our minister being there for 22 years. He taught us what it means to be a church member, what it means to be an elder, to be part of an elder's family. And John was going to be an elder. Our pastor talked to us and told us that we'd give you 30 days to think about it. If he's going to be an elder, as his wife, you will carry that role with him. He needs your support. And so, since that time, I've always been there and been supportive of him. And I remember telling him that if you become an elder, I want you to do that work. The children will be my responsibility. I'll do anything I can to take care of the kids. And that part has been tested in our lives too. Our second daughter, when he had a church event to attend, she was really sick, running temperature. But I told him, I said, John, when you become an elder, you are going to do your responsibility by attending churches, whatever you needed to do. Don't worry about the baby. God will see. The temperature of the fever wouldn't break. But it took him about 3 hours to get to that church. And about 3 hours later, after he had left, the fever broke. I'm always good on prayer. When you pray, don't waver, but believe. You already know before you ask what you need. And I've always stood on that. Many times we've been tested. And then we were talking about wanting to know about doctors, medical doctors. I always felt like that medical doctors are here, but if there's something wrong with us, that we can always go to them and that they can take care of us, they can help us. But then there's time in our life that the medical doctors weren't enough. And as Native Americans, we have our own doctors that we can go to. I've never known anyone that's kin to me or to John's family. They're all deceased. But my mother has told me about some Indian doctors in the past. And then also I heard this from my mother-in-law. Her dad was an Indian doctor. Some Indian doctors that you see, one in particular, when we go to her, after she'll listen to what is going on in our lives. But it's been told to us that an Indian doctor will know when you are coming. And also just by looking at you, I can tell what is wrong. There's experience that we've had. We went to one at John Edwards. And he could tell us about our family. We didn't say anything about how many children we had or the ages of our children. But he told us, we have two older boys that does not go out and run around. And they go sometimes, do not go out. You have a girl that's about 12 or 13. Be careful. Watch her. And I looked at John because we didn't tell him the ages of our children. And he told us that in our life, at that particular time, people are jealous of us. And I remember telling that doctor, we don't have any money. We don't have anything because he hasn't been able to work because of that problem. It doesn't have to be money. It could be love, and the love in the home that is destroyed. Any way that they can get you down. And then, if you're working for the Lord, there's a lot of opposition that we have been faced with. Not only us, but people in the community that we hear about. There are times that I couldn't walk. There are times John couldn't walk. But an Indian doctor that we were going to. And I told that Indian doctor, I try to be fair. I try to do what's right. And try to do what's good. Why would anyone want this? This is because you want or people are you're doing good and people are jealous. And that's how they want to destroy you. And I said, what would happen if you didn't doctor me? He said, they had fixed it for us and you would never walk it. And then John would just say, right, we both went to medical doctors. X-rays, nothing shows. They can give us medication, painkillers, but it will not help. The Indian doctors and the medicine Many,
The doctor, when you say give you medication or medicine, what kind of medicine was it, and how was it administered? Was it something you took by mouth, or was it something that was smoked, or was it liquid, or?
well, they usually take some. It's they usually give fixes with medication that you can put in the house, sprinkle, and what it has is, I don't know what all they put in it, but there's pieces of CD that you can see. We're to come home, that they'll give us a container that we can fill, or we can add water to it, and sprinkle all in the room. And also some sprinkle outside. When that, I don't know what all is in it, but when it's put together, you can smell that seed, and you can see bits of that seed. And the other one are like bark that they have given us. They have given us some, this one doctor that we have been to, first thing he'll request is 4 cans of stem cells or 4 bars of soap. Different things. After you take that to him, and then there's some that we bathe with. You have to do that. Most of the Indian doctors I know give you medication. They'll tell you, you do it for 4 days, you'll see the difference. Your life will be different. You'll know yourself if you're talking with. And so whatever it is, it's that way. Or sometimes they'll give you something to drink. And it's just like bars that you have to boil and put it into a gallon container. And we have to take it for, let's say, 6 days or 7 days. If you need more, come back. And it can be cup or half a cup that you take. And like when we finish the first gallon, we can add some more water to it and make another gallon. It's just different. It depends on what happened. I remember first time that we got acquainted with this doctor was he was going to give medicine to my mother. And this doctor is real slow. To me, he's too slow, but I guess he knows what he's doing. He'll go sit in his living room. It's about an hour. He'll be in and out, But he's a liberal. And we have Marissa with us. And we have gone up there. My uncle had said, I'll pay for the medicine if you all want to come get it. So I think we just have my mother, so we went down there to pick up the medicine. And meanwhile, he called Sheila. And he said, both of your homes, someone has messed up. So you need both homes worked on. And that's where we sprinkle, whatever he tells us to do. We did my mother's house like that, and we did our house like that. And then we had Marissa with her. And they said, he talked to John and I, and he said that y'all two haven't been to the long yet. By the time y'all think things are going to get better, things happen to your resident. And we just looked at each other. Yeah. He said, someone's working on this. They're jealous of your love. They could be jealous of your working in the church. And then you've got that girl sitting out there, watch her. Someone's behind. And stuff like that we don't even know. And so we picked up medication and brought it home. And another doctor that we've gone to said that a lot of these Indian homes have been built on land that's been given to someone that's been handed down generations to generations. And sometimes a new home can be set on top of the grave, and there's that evil spirit that comes around, or there's things that you notice in the house, but that's just, that one won't harm you. The more harm that you can do is people. There are people out there that knows medication or knows a little bit about it, but sometimes they don't know enough about it, and where they were given the knowledge to work good with, instead they practice for evil or try to hurt someone. And so there's, I guess, can be a good doctors, can be a bad doctors. But there's not any that's around here. You always have to go somewhere else. And like Julia McKinney, I lived in Brooklyn all my life, and I didn't know she was an Indian doctor. She moved off. Got married and moved off, and everybody was close. But I never did know that he was an Indian doctor.
Kind of changing gears and reflecting back to the days when you were growing up around this area, southeastern Oklahoma. Maybe you could share what you thought some of the attitudes were toward Indian people, toward Choctaw people by the larger white society. And also, what were some of the attitudes of the Indian people themselves, Choctaw people, towards the larger white society?
Well, I was in high school between 57, 58, and 59. And the blacks had their own school, and the Indians and the whites went together. And all I could hear was that Indians were no good. Choctaws were nothing but drunkards. Choctaws will never amount to anything. And even in my own home, my mother used to say, well, you're a Choctaw, you can't do this and you can't do that. And where people had parents or older brothers or sisters to come to school and take up for them, or whatever you want to call it, I had no one do that for me. And so I grew up. It wasn't all of the kids that was doing that, but there was part of the kids that grew up with, that I grew up with, that was that way. And the Choctaws were no good, Indians were no good, that we were considered lazy. And I guess I didn't know any better at the time. But now, as I've gotten older, there's enough black or white that are no good too. But at that particular time, that's what we heard. Some people are real nice, some people. And I see that as, even today, it's still that way. And it's Indians, I guess, will always live with that. But in my high school years, I heard that, even at home. But I've always tried to teach my kids that you can be anything you want to be. You can do just as well. But you have to do harder work. Work at it harder in order to achieve what you want. You're just good as the white folks, you're just good as the black, If they can do it, you can do it. try to emphasize that, be positive about it, where I was always told because I'm an Indian I couldn't, or because I was a Choctaw. Choctaw don't go that high, and I grew up with that. And then even my grandpa thought you didn't have to go to school. And back at that time, he worked out in the fields, and he was a farmer, so they could get by. But he didn't look beyond, and for my mother was the one that told not to tell him that he had to go on to school. He needed his education. And out of Grandpa Simon and Hetty's children, and Mary Amos's children, William is the first one to graduate from high school. And he's talked about there were too many Indians graduating in the early 50s. And he was one of the very few that finished high school. And today, even in church, I still see that some of them are real sincere when they come to you, talk to you, and they'll do anything for you. And then there's some that just on the surface that we see. And we can feel it. And we just go on. That's just the way of life that we picked up, I guess. And I've talked with other women, and they say the same thing. This is vegetarian men and women. And they have that attitude. I had one lady that was, I had gotten acquainted with presbytery. And when we was at presbytery, she just acted like she didn't want to talk to me, so I just left her alone. We went to a conference, to a workshop at Austin College. Because she was the only one from Eastern Oklahoma Presbytery, and then I was there, and some of the other Indian ladies were there. She kept hanging on to me at that time. But from then on, she became good friends. She and I became good friends, but when she was in this, her own little world over here with the other presbytery, she didn't have any time for me. But, and then I saw another lady. But she's always worked with us. He was Rachel at the Ranch, and she was on the fight. And she said, I want to be part of the Choctaw Parish. Can I be part of the Choctaw Parish? And she knew what it felt like. And from then on, but like I said, this woman was always part of us. She was always important. Anyway, I guess even at times, then at work courses and stuff. So to me, it's still there. It's like that, it's going to always be there. And though yet, most of the staff have their skin, but it's the color of the skin. You're farther than you do have that life, and I know it's good.
Well, moving on to the next area, I know that in many homes there's always sayings that people have, and I was wondering if you had any to share. Choctaw people seem to be very superstitious about things, and maybe also you can share some along with superstitions, as well as what you had spoken about, how some people use the gift of medicine for harming other people. maybe you could share some stories that you would have, cases of what you've heard or know about people who, I guess we would consider them, in English we would call them a witch or a warlock or something like that. Maybe you can share a little about that.
Okay, well, I guess I grew up in a home where you'd be cooking or something and you dropped your dish towel or dish rag. I would say, well, someone's going to be coming, they'll be hungry. And usually it happens. And I don't know that I've seen that. And then another one is that you see horses or especially horses that are out there just running around, and which they usually don't. And especially in wintertime, you see them do that. And when we were on our way to Dubuque, we saw some horses. And they were just really galloping around, just going around. We saw them just one field. And I looked at that, and I said, look at those horses. I said, usually when they do that, cold fronts come in, or it's going to be icy or whatever. I said that, and Lee said, well, that's what I have heard too, So, and then another one is, I've never known this. I've heard other family tell me that when you're driving along, like on the highway, and a blackbird comes in front of you, close to the car, that you're going to hear bad news. There's going to be a death. Someone that you know, or someone that's close to you. And someone else has shared that with you. And then another one is that you have dogs around your own house, and they'll make a sound, crying sound. And that's not a good sign when it's at your house or near your house. After, they do that, it won't be very long until you hear someone has passed away. It could be someone close to you, someone that's relative. But the dog usually doesn't do that unless it's going to be someone that's going to, affect you, or someone close to you. And that, or you can have something on the wall, and for no reason it falls off. And that means that you're going to hear bad news. Father, I really want me to remember. I used to be in another lady's house. Woman was dying, and she was harm people. And that when she was dying, she was hollering and screaming that if you kill someone else, you're responsible for someone else's death. You'll never make it to heaven. And she just cried and cried. And they used to know her as being a witch or harming people. Killing people. I think older generations say you can hurt people, but there's a time that you're going to pay back what you've done. So I don't know. But, I think that all this time that we were growing up, that my mother used to tell me that, and my mother-in-law told me that. When you have an infant, you don't have people that you don't know just give you canned goods. Anything, food to eat, unless you know that person real well, because they can harm you easily. Don't pass the baby around people that you don't know, behind you. And I think our children do some of that. And just been giving guns and giving candy, be careful. And this is my question. And many times I have told my kids that when somebody gets some candy or piece of gum or something, they look at me, and if I know the question, I'll nod my head yes, and then I'll nod my head no, and they wouldn't maybe chew it or they wouldn't eat it. They just something, and then another knows two children. This is a story that's been told over and over that this is what used to happen in this generation. And many times they say that we don't have any of that anymore. That people don't want to believe that. The older generation usually say that they are still here. I don't know. It's just what I've been told. I believe in it. That started. Harming people. And a friend told me that one had given her a piece of jewelry and found out that he had put medication or did something to it. And when she received that, she was very sick. She was so sick they didn't know if they were going to pull her out, get her out of that. Marshall Sampson was an Indian doctor. So back in that time when we needed an Indian doctor, they used to just go to that home and doctor them. So he stayed about 2 or 3 days with me. And he kept asking her mother if she had anything that someone gave her. And she kept saying no. I don't think so. So finally went up to that child and asked her. She said she was like 1300. And she said that there was something that they gave her. So we went to this girl and asked her. And she said no. I don't remember anything, and then finally she remembered that there was a human that she had put on the bed with a really private and the doctor said that it was that human that someone had given her with some stuff on it. I said, that's what she said. And after he stayed with her because she said that if he didn't stay there and work with her, they were that strong that they could, kill a person if they wanted to. And I never did know who it was, but there was someone that did something to me back in the earlier time of this. Maybe notice there was a motor and that I worked outside the house when I left my workplace. I felt I got home. Every time I got home and kids started playing, nothing right in there about stuff. And I didn't know how to look on this. And I went to a white doctor. And tranquilizer. And it seemed to help a little. It just really good. I'd get mad when I went home, and I'd just start crying. I didn't quit crying. And my eyelids would just all swollen. So I really was going to nurse the things and getting a shock. If I listened to this doctor, I would have just been tranquilized for a long time. And I really kept telling me, just keep praying, just keep praying. And And it was just only when I was at home. When I'm at work, things it didn't bother me. I thought really when I was away from home, the longer than I got to the house. Mom said something to me and Julie, I couldn't really much stop crying, just couldn't quit. So my mother told me and said, that's not her way. She doesn't do that, but all of a sudden she's crying and all of us can't figure her out and said, that's just not her way. She's never acted like that before. I said, that's something you have to remember about feeling. That's something that's having a lot of kids. And that's when I told them that we didn't have enough money because John hasn't been able to work because of health problems. And he said, oh, it could be the love in the home. And he said that if she was the type of woman that could just walk away from her family and never look back, she could have gone. But the reason why